Hello? Okay. Now, what I have to do in this video is demystify superstring physics and break it down so anybody can understand it. I'm going to do my best. And that will lead in the next direction. Okay, first of all, here we go. As you can see, I drew some pictures. This is what they call a standing wave. It's a diagram. This is a pipe, the green line right here and up here. This is a standing wave. You can look it up on the internet, get a better explanation. You have your third harmonic, which is 3 waveforms, your second harmonic, which is 2 waveforms, and your first harmonic, the blue line, which is 1 waveform. This is what happens in a pipe organ. This is a standing wave. It's what happens when waves resonate. This is it from a different angle, and this is it straight on. Now, there is an invention for which I do not think they have found a practical use, in which they use 3 piezoelectric discs to generate a circular or a spherical sound wave. And the spherical sound wave, of course, would come with harmonics also. And in this particular case, the little spot in the center of this beaker of water, when these sound waves come together, produces a small cavitation, which forces it to emit light from a vapor inside the water. It's freaking cool. And then we come to this, which is a very simple diagram, one of my favorite inventions, the timekeeper in a watch. This is a flywheel with a magnet, and this is a coil, and every time this magnet goes by this coil, it signals time. And this coil is weighted and balanced, and it is one of the most accurate timepieces built before quartz crystals came along, quartz timing, which is leads into my next topic. If you consider that standing wave to be the fundamental component of a superstring, all of a sudden a superstring is really easy to picture. But before we go further in that direction, I have to talk about the timepiece and the flywheel. And we're going to call this spin resonance, because the rate at which that flywheel spins is considered a type of resonance, a type of waveform. The fact that the magnet goes by it at the same speed, same time, constantly, producing one of the most accurate timepieces ever made. It's fundamental. And the reason why is very simple. In a particle accelerator, as a proton is accelerated towards the speed of light, it gains in mass. This is because it is running into the ether. There's nothing else in the particle accelerator but empty space, yet as it gains in speed, it gains in mass. Back in 1972, a single proton could hold the electrical energy of, I think it was 16 million electron volts. Single proton. Wow. A lot of energy stored in one place. A lot of mass that seems to come from nowhere, right? It comes from ether. What this tells you is that ether has a certain rate at which it can dissipate or be lost. And it has a certain rate at which it can be gained as an object travels into it. Your flywheel, the outer edge, is traveling at a constant speed, thus developing a constant size, right? What is happening is the waveform, which is now a particle, is spinning into the ether on its leading edge, where it is absorbing ether and then dissipating ether at a constant rate. This gives it its constants. In order to get rid of the ether, what they did is they took Maxwell's equations, turned them into constants, threw them into the math, and then didn't tell anybody where they came from. There are mathematical constants all throughout physics math. It's all ether. Plain and simple. Now, what I'd like to show you is that if you take this, right? You have 1, 2, and 3. This is a natural mathematical function of the universe. Happens all over the place. And what starts out as one line then turns into two lines and turns into three-dimensional space or volume. If you take this one and lay it on top of this one and lay it on top of both of them, you now have a circular standing wave. If all three of them are spinning, all three of them have a different distance from core or center, and therefore have a different speed at which the outer edge is moving. This is your source of field as the particle distorts space-time. Meaning that the original particle, the original superstring, has all three properties of electric, of nuclear, and of gravity. Now, I know that they like to talk in terms of nuclear, weak, and strong, and other stuff. They say there's more than three fields. No, there isn't. If you take electric, which is an electron spinning around its axis, or maybe two of them traveling around in a circle together, you get an electrostatic field. You take a whole bunch of them, push them through a wire, and when they align and work together and are moving as a whole in a completely different direction, how the particle moves creates the field. You get magnetism, which is strong electricity. Under that premise, strong nuclear is simply nuclear particles that are aligned and working together, just like a bar magnet, where it is the protons that are aligned and moving together in the same way that creates the magnetic field, right? So we really only have three fields: weak gravity, weak electric, and weak nuclear. And so, that's your superstring. It's not real complicated. It's a standing wave of light in space-time, which generates three different fields. Okay? Because of the spin velocity of the waveform inside, moving against the ether. It's a simple explanation, and it doesn't take a mystical superstring. Okay? And now, what does this mean? What am I getting at? Why is this important? Well, I would like to demonstrate for you why science would not want you to know such a thing. Now, in superstring math is the only math that provides for a universe in which all three fields can come from one thing. But it is a multidimensional theory that they eventually turned into M theory. M theory is that all of the different versions or dimensions of the math are actually the same thing from different viewpoints. Not true. Each one of those mathematical models for superstring physics is the model of the mass that is held within each dimension, each one being different by a phase angle, allowing them to coexist in exactly the same place at the same time and never run into each other, and only interact through field. I go into that in a video called Heal Your Soul. Now, this is important, and all of this comes down to one thing. The original particle from which everything is made has all three properties. What that means is photons have mass, not angular momentum, for those of you that know what that means. In Maxwell's original equations, I actually have a physics book that probably should have been put in a museum. It was in pristine condition when I got a hold of it. Now it's absolutely chock full of notes. In there they describe how Maxwell came to his mathematical equation that proved the speed of light is electromagnetic radiation using ether math. And it refers to a packet of quanta. You don't hear about this a lot, but Maxwell, in his original theorem, supposed that light was actually made up of packets of quanta, meaning that there's actually a particle out there smaller than a photon, something that a photon is made out of. And I'm going to tell you that since when matter ignites, decays, it turns into light and energy. The entire world is made out of light, so forth and so on. And therefore, this packet of quanta would have also all three properties of all three fields. And the universe is multidimensional. Now, you can't have a Big Bang and an M theory. They don't work. Because, fundamentally, you cannot have a standing wave to create matter or mass or energy without time. And with, and you can't have a Big Bang unless time didn't exist beforehand. Went into that earlier. Now, what this tells you is time existed before everything else. Big Bang never happened. So, what that actually tells us is that the universe was actually kind of created from a big collapse, as the weight of space and time collapsed in on itself. It also tells us that everything in the universe is based on and made out of time moving at different speeds. Okay? Particle movement, light, photons, everything is light moving at different speeds on different scales. Tiny, tiny, tiny to the massive, massive, massive. It's all time. Time, as it moves through itself at different speeds, is the source of everything in existence. And the reason that a lot of this may not seem important just yet is because it's a little hard to grasp what it is that I'm saying. Now, I will start the next video explaining that. Now, there's a couple of things I'd like you to know that you don't actually have to know and aren't even relevant, but I want you to know anyways. Now, when you consider what it is I just said in my last video, there's a couple of conclusions that you might be led to or might not be led to. I would like to show you why it is that this kind of knowledge would like to be mystified or kept from you. Now, this is important, to me anyways. When you take the superstring model that I've given you, a standing wave in ether, that has all three components of the primary fields in it already, and how that would build up to construct the universe, in that the way a particle moves creates the field that it produces. And the way that the field is creates the way the particle moves. It's kind of a universal translation in there. There's something that's very obvious, but not so obvious. And that is that with one field, you can stretch and distort particle movement. You could stretch and distort the field, and you can literally take quantum space on a tiny, tiny, tiny level and stretch it out. Depending on your field configuration. In nuclear magnetic resonance imagery systems, they have a frequency that causes a proton to topple and cause a re-emission. And that is what they pick up on to create those images. Taking that basic premise and the other, you now take the quantum world and stretch it out and hit it with the right frequency, and voila. Nuclear waste is gone. You have now taken your nuclear waste and turned it into lead by forced emission through the proper field configuration and frequency. Nobody has even moved in that direction or technology. There is not an invention that even goes in that direction that I know of. And it could possibly be the end of nuclear waste. However, who benefits? And what's the lie, per se, right? Here's the deal. Nuclear waste, most of it, has a half-life of 21,000 years. Okay? They used to build pacemakers with a nuclear battery inside. A little thorium and a thermopile. Small device that makes electricity from heat. Put it in your chest, don't have to replace the battery. Okay? Now, with nuclear waste, we are talking about a nuclear battery that won't be half dead for 21,000 years. So, they charge you for the electricity when they produce the nuclear waste. Then when they can't do that anymore, society comes down on them. They come up with the nuclear waste, the nuclear battery. And out here at INEL, which is paid for by taxes, they store that kind of stuff. So they're charging you to produce it and sell it to you. Then they're charging you to store it so they can then sell it back to you later. What it is that makes nuclear waste so dangerous is the fact it gives off high energy radiation. A photocell, a solar panel, tuned directly to the frequency that waste puts off. A thermopile, which we have incredibly good ones now using semiconductors, and a mesh of wire to allow the electrons to travel around and hit the protons that are traveling out as theta radiation. Because you got beta and theta. Theta, the result is helium. Okay? And you now have an energy source that won't be half dead for 21,000 years. Or you have a science that can turn it into lead through forced ignition. Mm-hmm. You can see why they might not want you to know it's possible to get rid of nuclear waste, right? It's just kind of an important detail I thought I'd throw in. It's really irrelevant. Now, the reason that all of this is so important, multiple dimensions, the universe, the weight of the universe crashing into itself, time creating everything, is that I want you to understand from a spiritual perspective that it is ether that is God. It's omnipresent. It's in all things. It's almost impossible to detect. They did manage to detect it in the early days when they were still looking for it. And they then turned that math into quantum mechanics, and kind of hid the whole thing about gravity and inertial space and lasers and stuff. But since I don't want to rehash old news. Now, omnipresence is what everything comes back to. And a all-pervasive ether would be omnipresent. I would like to propose an idea in that, according to the word of now, there is the nameless one, there is the Ancient of Days, and there is our Father in heaven, I am. And I will compare them to the nameless one would be hyperspace, the Ancient of Days would be space, and the I am would be subspace. The three components from which ether is made and from which all of the universe springs. The Ancient of Days being an implication of the point at which time began to exist, the thing in which our physical world is made from. Now, I know, I just jumped clear off a cliff there. I understand. But I want you to consider something. Okay? If that is true, then that means the spiritual you, the spiritual body that is housed within your soul, is actually a small chunk of crystallized ether. That from it springs field and effect and creation. And that becomes very important once your spiritual being begins to manifest. Once you begin to bring that being forth, once you begin to heal your soul, put all the pieces back together. And when you step into that space and manifest who you really are meant to be, and take your consciousness to the next level, your consciousness, once it is fortified with energy and chakras and fires and so forth and so on, it begins to change its nature and become field and effect and just, I will be showing you that in meditations, how to use that when you meditate and how it feels and its effects at a later date. And thus ends my scientific portion of this series. Now, in my next video, I am going to give you the most powerful tools that I have the most powerful tool I've ever been given for achieving in like 3 weeks what other people have not managed to do in 20 years. And showing you how to tune into God Radio and how to manifest the ability to actually feel your breath as you breathe through your chakras. Not just energy, not just feel your chakras, but know exactly where they are and feel your breath as you breathe through them. And that's a wonderful tool. And then after that, I am going to give you the question from the Word of Now that gives you the answer you're looking for. And that is very important. Thank you.